Hi everyone, again. We're now starting to unpack Assessment 2. Now that we've looked at our Queensland College of Teachers standards, we understand the 10 standards, how they align to the new national standards, which have 7. We've looked at depth at 3 of them and looked at the practices and knowledges that teachers are expected to have. Now, this is setting you up with all the prior knowledge and understanding that you require to be successful in undertaking Assessment 2. Now, what are we asking of you in Assessment 2? Well, the task rationale asks you to consider yourself as a teacher in Queensland and how you are demonstrating your performance in relation to these standards. The standards are seen to be a public statement by the profession of what teachers in Queensland schools need to know, need to understand, and of course be able to do in the classroom. They provide the common reference point for describing, celebrating, and supporting the complex and varied nature of the work of teachers, and this assessment task introduces you to 3 of the professional standards. Now they are Standard 1, 3, and 5, and it starts you commenting on your ongoing learning and the implications for your professional practice in relation to these standards. So that's the rationale behind what we're asking you to do. The task itself asks you to submit 3 individual responses to these questions, and each of these responses is around 500 words each. Each response is going to have its own reference list attached to it. In essence, it's like 3 mini essays in one. The first question looks at how you as a teacher might design engaging and flexible learning experiences for your own classroom. This connects back to Standard 1. If you've done your prior homework or activities or watched the previous video, you will be fully aware of the sorts of knowledge a teacher needs to undertake this sort of work and the practices that are seen to be appropriate in Queensland schools. These are the go-to lists when we ask you this question: how might you design engaging and flexible learning experiences? In question 2, how might you design intellectually challenging learning experiences for your class? Again, we refer you back to the standards, and in that document this relates to Standard 3, designing intellectually challenging learning experiences for your class. The final question, question 3, asks how might formative assessment techniques, and we're suggesting that you only choose 2, support student learning. This relates back to Standard 5 of the professional standards for teachers. Formative assessment we have discussed briefly in one of our previous week's lessons, and I will remind you that formative relates to ongoing, informal feedback that supports students' learning. It is not summative feedback or assessment which occurs after the learning has occurred, but instead formative assessment occurs during the learning process and improves student learning and understanding. We expect that you will follow these guidelines, that the work will be around 1,500 words, that's plus or minus the normal 10%, that you will have a word count either at the end of your full assessment or at the end of each separate question, that you will have 1.5 line spacing with 12-point font, this is required, and that you provide some margins for us, around 2.5 on each side, both right and left, so that we can write in this to give you your feedback. In education faculty here at QUT, we expect that you use APA referencing, and we will again be guiding you and directing you in this. A reference list should be attached to each question. We look in then to the criteria, and we suggest, as for any piece of assessment when you are working here at university, that you look to the criteria for the minutiae and detail. What we are valuing in this particular task is the ability to identify teaching strategies that exemplify the particular professional standards we have sent you to. So we're looking for strategies. We want you to identify them. In the next category, we actually want you to justify why you have identified this particular strategy. How does it meet the particular question? How is it working? Why do you think it's going to work well in a classroom? And of course, we expect you to link this justification to the literature. And finally, the final criteria is being able to critically reflect on your own professional philosophy and the practice that you intend to use in your classroom. Again, we would be looking for a connection to the literature. These are the 3 key criteria that we'll be using to mark your work. You need to ensure that you understand the sorts of range of grades that will occur if you match your work to this table. Therefore, it is really important that you look to justify, not just identify, but also justify the strategies that you put forward in your responses to these 3 questions. When you look at structuring your work, we're making a suggestion that you initially start off with a very clear introduction where the first paragraph would introduce, define, and outline the key concepts. So unpacking what engaging and flexible learning experiences may look like and what scope engaging and flexible learning might take place in your classroom. So the very first part is an introduction of the key concepts. In the body, you need to answer the set question. So you'd need to explicitly discuss how the idea responds, connects, as well as reflects the standard, and justify the strategies that you choose in light of the wider literature. The final synthesis would need to be tight, where you pull your argument and your discussion together and critically reflect on your own developing practice, your own philosophical approach, and understanding in light of the responses and strategies. Structure that we're suggesting, where you have a short introduction, a key body, and a tight synthesis. As you know, we are suggesting that you look beyond the tutorials for support, and we have already directed you to 2 key aspects of the library. At the moment, we are offering, QUT offers study solutions, which are one-on-one appointments for around 25 minutes. They're free and available at the library. You need to book your appointment, and they're open from 9 to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, or drop in between the drop-in times of 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. on Tuesdays to Thursdays. Now, this is a great service, and if you are uncertain and want some feedback on your drafts, you need to follow up on study solutions. If you're feeling quite confident but just want to make sure that you're on track, Study Well on the library site has online tutorials that will help you tighten and hone your study skills. So either of these study support strategies are very appropriate, and because of the percentage of this assessment task, it's worth 50%, I highly encourage you to think about looking at other strategies beyond the tutorials to ensure that you are very successful in your response to this particular draft. See you in our Collaborate session on Friday. Bye.